In the quiet stretch of red earth where the sun kissed the land each morning with gold, Amina lived a life woven tightly by tradition. She was known in the village not just for her beauty, but for the quiet strength she carried in her voice, her walk, her silence. Daughter of a respected healer, and now the wife of Kweku, a stoic farmer who believed more in deeds than words, her days were full of routine, fetching water, preparing meals, tending the compound, offering respectful nods to elders. Her marriage, arranged and solemnized when she was just 17, had blossomed with expectations but quickly settled into a dull rhythm. Kweku was not unkind, but he was not present in the ways that mattered to Amina. He was often in the fields before the first cockcrow and returned home long after dusk. When he sat to eat, there was barely conversation, just chewing, nodding, and sleep. She missed the sound of laughter in her home, missed being asked how she felt, what she dreamed. Still, she endured. That was what good wives did. She had no reason to complain. Yet, inside her, a strange emptiness was taking root. She felt like a drum, whole on the outside but hollow inside. Then came Obesai. He arrived with the dust of 100 roads on his sandals and stories from the city in his mouth. A traitor, he was lean, with eyes that searched rather than stared, and a voice that softened when he asked questions. Unlike most men in the village, Obesai did not speak to women as if they were only listeners. He asked Amina about the herbs she gathered, about the meaning behind the songs she hummed. He laughed, not at her, but with her, and when he smiled, it reached his eyes. Their first conversation had been accidental, beside the well. Amina had spilled water on her wrapper and muttered a proverb under her breath. Obesai, passing by, completed the proverb. She had turned, surprised, and for a brief moment, they both smiled. Nothing more. But in that moment, Amina felt something shift. She wasn't invisible. Someone had seen her. The days that followed were subtle. Obesai would nod in greeting, linger a little longer near her father's herb stall, offer dried dates or small gifts under the pretense of trade. Amina was careful, always watching who was around. She had not decided anything. She simply let the wind blow, curious about where it might take her. Kweku remained unchanged, silent, dutiful, hardworking. She wondered if he even noticed the light fading from her eyes. She wondered if he ever truly saw her. The village women still called her lucky. Married to a provider, a man who did not beat her, who brought home food and built her a strong hut. But Amina knew there were other ways to suffer. Loneliness could wear a woman down until she no longer recognized her own reflection. And so, as the sun continued to rise and fall on the red earth, a storm quietly began to gather in Amina's heart. Not loud, not fast. Just a whisper, a hunger, and the memory of a smile that made her feel alive. It started with the smallest things, a shared glance, a word spoken with just enough warmth to be remembered. Amina began to feel it deep in her bones, the anticipation of seeing Obesai again. He didn't come every day, but when he did, it felt like the air changed. She would catch herself smoothing her wrapper, adjusting her scarf, pretending to be indifferent while her heart betrayed her with its quickened beat. Obesai never crossed the line too early. He knew how to wait, how to build trust like stacking dry wood before striking a flame. One afternoon, under the shade of the neem tree where she often rested with her woven basket of herbs, Obesai sat near, not too close, but near enough. He asked her about the bitter leaves she carried, and she spoke more than usual. She explained their use for stomach troubles and fever, but he listened as if every word were sacred. He didn't interrupt. When she paused, he waited. That silence was not empty. It was filled with attention, with interest, with the kind of presence she had longed for. That day marked the shift. There was a feeling in the air that both of them could sense, but didn't name. It wasn't love yet. It was a dangerous curiosity, a longing dressed in politeness. The way Obesai said her name made her skin remember it long after he'd gone. He never pressured, never asked for more than she could give, but his every word carried the weight of something unspoken. The first time she touched his hand, it was accidental, or so she told herself. He was handing her a carved wooden hair comb from his bag of goods, and her fingers brushed his. It was nothing, but it wasn't nothing. Their eyes met, and time seemed to stop. Amina turned away quickly, her heart pounding like the village drums in festival season. That night, she didn't sleep well. Not from guilt, yet, but from the strange fire that had begun to smolder inside her. Days passed. The village went on unaware. Kweku, as usual, was buried in his work. Even when he was home, he wasn't really there. Amina stopped trying to reach him. Something had broken a long time ago, and now she could finally name it. Absence. Not the kind where someone leaves, but the kind where they stay and still make you feel alone. When the affair began, it wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. It happened the way rivers overflow during the rainy season, not all at once, but gradually, until everything is wet. Amina and Obesai found themselves together in the old granary behind the healer's hut. She had gone there to store dry leaves. He followed, supposedly to deliver spices. No words were exchanged before it happened. Just breath. Just closeness. Just two people starved for something they could only find in each other. It was soft, brief, but filled with urgency. And when it ended, neither spoke. She adjusted her wrapper. He picked up his bag. They both walked away in silence, each carrying a new truth. In the days after, Amina felt two things fighting inside her: the thrill of being seen, touched, desired, and the weight of betrayal. She still cooked for Kweku, still smiled at the elders. But now, when she looked at her own reflection, she saw someone she both recognized and feared. A woman with a secret. A woman who had tasted something forbidden and wasn't ready to let it go. Whispers started like wind moving through dry grass, soft, almost nothing. A neighbor mentioned seeing Amina and Obesai talking too long by the riverbank. Another claimed he saw them walking close after market hours. At first, no one spoke directly. It was all in looks, pauses in conversations when she entered a room, smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Amina felt it before she heard it. The village had begun to talk. Kweku noticed before he let on. He saw the difference in her. The way she avoided his gaze, the sudden attention to her appearance, the way her silence became heavier. He asked no questions, made no accusations. But he watched. And the watching became a distance more punishing than words. He didn't touch her, didn't ask for her company at night. He ate his meals and left the compound without saying much. His quiet was no longer peaceful. It was loud with suspicion. Amina began to dread the morning light. She imagined what the women said when she passed. That she had shamed her marriage. That she was ungrateful. That Obesai was a traveler, not the kind of man who stays. And deep inside, she feared they were right. Because Obesai had started changing, too. He became more careful, less present. The warmth in his voice cooled. He spoke in shorter sentences. Avoided lingering in the open. His visits to the village became fewer. He claimed business called him elsewhere. One morning, he was simply gone. Amina asked no one, but she knew. He had run, not from the village, but from her. From the risk, from the burden, from the consequences he never intended to carry. She waited 3 market days, then 5. When he didn't return, the truth sank in like cold water. He had come, taken what he wanted, and left her to carry the weight alone. The elders summoned her. It was not dramatic. No public punishment, but the shame was sharper than any cane. They asked questions in roundabout ways. Amina denied nothing, but she confessed nothing either. Her silence confirmed what everyone already believed. One elder told her that a woman's dignity is like palm wine. Once spilled, no container can hold it again. At home, Kweku never mentioned Obesai. He didn't scream or strike her. He simply stopped being her husband in all ways except name. They shared space, not life. He slept on his mat, she on hers. The fire between them was cold ash. The loneliness she had once feared returned, now dressed in punishment. Before, she had felt invisible. Now she was fully seen, but only as a warning. Mothers pulled their daughters closer when Amina passed. Men looked at her with a mixture of contempt and desire. She became a symbol, not a person. Not wife. Not mother. Just the one who had betrayed her home. And in the silence that followed Obaisai's disappearance, Amina learned that infidelity's worst consequence wasn't just exposure. It was abandonment. By the man who had awakened her. By the husband she had betrayed. And by a society that never forgave women for what it excused in men. The days grew long, and Amina's name no longer stirred curiosity, but quiet judgment. No one spoke it aloud in gatherings, but everyone remembered. She had become a ghost in her own home, moving through spaces that once held warmth but now echoed only cold routine. Kweku remained, but their marriage was a structure without spirit. He provided food, maintained the compound, spoke only when necessary. His silence, no longer questioned, it had become the answer. She had broken something he would never attempt to fix. Time did not heal. It simply moved forward, dragging her with it. Amina stopped expecting softness. She no longer waited at the door or adjusted her wrapper in the morning mirror. She wore her shame like old cloth, faded but still heavy. The village eventually quieted. People moved on, found new topics, but the scar remained. She was never truly welcomed again, only tolerated. Her only companion was her daughter, a quiet child with curious eyes. Amina poured herself into the girl, hoping to teach her the strength to be more than what the world allowed. At night, when the wind whispered through the thatch roof, Amina would hold her close and speak truths disguised as stories, of women who lost their way, of choices that seemed small but cracked foundations, of how the heart can hunger and lie. She never spoke of Obaisai by name. He became a lesson rather than a memory. Amina no longer blamed him. She didn't forgive, but she understood. He was a traveler, and she had been a stop, not a destination. The fire he lit in her had burned everything she had built. Not because she loved wrongly, but because the world was not kind to women who reached beyond what was given to them. Kweku grew older in silence. He never remarried. Perhaps he still felt the wound, or maybe he had resigned himself to what life had become. They shared duties, respected boundaries, but love never returned. Amina did not ask for it. She had made peace with absence. What she could not reclaim, she replaced with purpose. In later years, young women would still glance at her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. They heard the story, twisted by time, colored by opinion. Some judged, others pitied. But none truly knew what it meant to stand in her skin, to feel that aching mix of desire and consequence. Amina became a quiet legend, neither villain nor hero. Just a woman who had made a choice and lived long enough to understand its cost. When she spoke now, her voice was measured, firm, not bitter, not broken, just wise. She warned young wives gently, not with commands but with questions. Are you lonely, or are you lost? Does he see you, or does he just look at you? In the end, her life was not defined by the affair, but by what followed. Not every story ends in ruin. Some end in understanding. Amina never found love again, but she found clarity. And sometimes that is enough.